morning, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. Well, beyond all the glitz and glam of Hollywood, there's one other thing that Hollywood knows a lot about, and that's failure. So, guess what? The Museum of Failure is in Los Angeles, and I thought, let's go take a look at what somebody thought was a great idea that turned out to be an absolute failure. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. And 3 ugly ones. There we go. There it is. Well, here we are. This ought to be a blast. Now here's a infomercial that I remember, the Rejuvenique. It was Linda Evans was peddling this product, and you put this on. It was supposed to be like a facial massager, but it was a failure because people said that when they put it on, it felt like 1,000 ants were biting their skin, and yeah, you can imagine that wouldn't be the greatest thing to feel. They said it was never tested or approved before being sold. Oh yeah, the mini disc. I remember the mini disc. That was big in like 2000 when I was going to music school. Everybody thought that was the future of everything, so they were buying recording devices with mini discs. Never caught on, did it? Frozen entrees by Colgate. The same company that brings you toothpaste is now making your lasagna. Oh, that's interesting. This is actually a video game that was touted as being the greatest independent video game of all time when it was released, or that's what they said it was going to be, but it actually was given the title the worst game of the year. Oh, this is weird. They had Bic pens for her that were molded to fit in a woman's hand, and one of the slogans that they used was, "These pens make me feel so feminine and desirable, I can barely keep the men away when I'm holding one of these in my dainty hand. My husband has started to take fencing lessons just to keep the men away." Well, the Hula Hawaii chair was listed on Time Magazine's 2010 of worst inventions, 50 worst inventions. Yeah, I guess people got tired of swiveling around in their chair. I remember this too. Supposedly the ultimate ab workout. Maybe a little too ultimate for everyone. Now some actually say that the reason that this was such a failure is because Ellen DeGeneres showed this chair on her show and was mocking it, using it in the workspace. Of course, anybody that's a Back to the Future fan knows the DeLorean. The story of the DeLorean is that they were mass-produced in Northern Ireland by a bunch of inexperienced factory workers. The engines were underpowered. It said there was just a whole host of total calamities with the design and everything, but or with the working product inside. But yet, it's still remembered as one of the most classic cars of all time, thanks to Back to the Future. And this is the Minitel, the French version of the internet. That's funny, if you read this, it says that thanks to the Minitel, as early as 1982, the French could do their banking, parentheses, search for porn, make travel reservations, parentheses, search for porn, check stock prices, parentheses, search for porn, scan the phone directory, and so on, and so on, and so on. Said at its peak there were 9 million terminals across France. However, the internet became the norm in the rest of the world. Ah yes, Howard Hughes' $22 million Spruce Goose. Who would have guessed a $22 million plane and 400,000 pounds of material would not be a success? Oh yeah, and there's a great documentary about this, if you've ever heard the story of E.T. and the Atari. Basically, Atari was a booming business, almost like the Facebook of its day, being that popular, and they put all their stock into making this game and rushed it to the market, and just it was a total failure. Here it says, retailers were dreaming of a green Christmas, but customers found the game difficult to play, clunky, and redundant. So then in the documentary they show that all these copies of ET just got, basically all of the stock of Atari got buried in a landfill. And so this guy goes out, tries to find basically the map where he was told everything was buried, and he goes out and he does eventually find all these Atari games buried in a landfill. And what's interesting is that the town where all of those games were buried claimed that they owned that property, and so they were actually awarded all the games and everything that were dug up, and they sell them on the internet. So when you buy like an ET that was buried in the landfill, it comes with like a little certificate of authenticity from the town saying like when it was found and everything. Now this here is the Itera plastic bicycle, and they said the reason this failed is because even though they thought with the oil boom of the 70s that this would help save people money, they found that the light frame made the bikes wobble, and that the seat and the handlebars would crack. Now my guess also would be, you would think maybe the sun would damage it as well, probably weaken the plastic at some point. And it says here one of the other problems was that not every box that you bought contained every part to the bicycle, which tended to frustrate the customers. Yep, I can see how that would happen. And there's the long forgotten Barnes & Noble Nook. It said that though it was a nice upgrade to the Amazon Kindle, it says that the Kindle Fire was already on its way. And so when this came out, it just wasn't enough to make people want to leave Amazon. So the Nook only lasted for about 2 years. Now, who from my generation doesn't remember the Power Glove? If you ever saw The Wizard or saw any commercials in the 80s, you know what the Power Glove was. You could actually put that on in some versions of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out or the Punch-Out game, and you could box with that on. Here's something called the Corfam shoe, which was a synthetic leather that they thought would take the world by storm, and instead people just thought it was uncomfortable and cheap. Yeah, not everything's a winner. Well, here's the Nintendo Virtual Boy. This was supposed to be a 3D game changer, and it was the first 3D device, but apparently nobody liked it. Unimpressive 3D graphics and the fact that it wasn't head-mounted were the key gripes. Yeah, so basically you had to put it on a table and then shove your face in there. Now these are all products that were total failures. Orbit Soda. Never heard of it. Says it was a soda that contained small edible balls of gelatin that were suspended in the drink by gelatin gum. Ugh. Sounds disgusting, doesn't it? Then you have New Coke, and it says that the public was immediate. The consumers were furious that they changed the Coke flavor to this new taste. Coke reintroduced the original formula under the name Coca-Cola Classic later. Yep, I tried this stuff. This was garbage. Coca-Cola Black. Yeah, that was awful. It was supposed to be basically like Jolt soda for Coca-Cola, but it was coffee flavored Coke, but it was just garbage. Blech. Interesting name for a candy. AIDS was a weight loss candy that Hedy Lamarr was once a spokesperson for. Now this one I'm a little confused by because I drank Crystal Pepsi when it was out. It wasn't that different. I don't know why that was such a failure. Maybe it was psychological. In fact, I thought it was a good campaign at the time. I thought it was a novelty to buy like Crystal Pepsi. Now this was a new concept for an insulin inhaler. They thought this would be a great idea because then you wouldn't have needles, but nobody wanted to carry this big bulky thing around. And then here you had the HD DVD. Of course, Blu-ray blew that out of the water. And then my friend Breck has a massive collection of laser discs, so this one might be making him tear up a little bit. Now I can tell you from watching laser discs with a couple of friends that own them, what the problem with them were. If you didn't store them properly, they would warp, and then once they warped, you couldn't play them right. I had a friend that said like you couldn't stack them, you had to lay them out. It was just like, he said it was a mess. And plus it says right here one of the problems was that people didn't like that you couldn't record content on it. Now this is interesting. This failure was called the Amazon Fire Phone, and the reason this failed was because people didn't like the fact that Amazon installed a button that would allow you just to buy things at your fingertip. People thought it was a cynical way of forcing you to buy. Little did they know then, and this just failed, that's what people have been doing with their phones for like how many years now? Just buying stuff on there? Well, here's Barbie's younger sister Skipper. Now, this, it says it was when the girl rotated, growing up Skipper's left arms forward, she grew an inch and developed breasts. Rotate the same arm backwards, and she went to prepubescence. People found it a bit creepy. Yeah, I can see that. Oh wow, check this thing out. This was a Febreze Synth Stories. It basically looked like a CD player, but when you put that disc in there, it released scents. Like scents based off of like mountain aromas and things like that. Oh yeah, the Microsoft Zune. Talk about finding a way to be ostracized from your friends. Once you bought those files, you couldn't do anything with them. Everybody was buying iTunes at the time, and Zune came out with a totally different file. You couldn't share files or anything. Oh yeah, I remember Grizzly Chomps. I remember my big complaint with it was, why would you want to buy a snack cake that somebody already took a bite out of? I want that extra bite in there. And our next one's the Titanic. Now they said the problem with this is even though they used the latest and greatest marine technology, they used cheap rivets that as soon as it hit the iceberg, they basically cracked and exploded. Nice one. And here was the Pacemaker DJ, an $800 device that you could walk around with that would produce beats and make you a rapper on the go. Yet, kind of a creepy name, and nobody wanted to pay $800 for it. Oh, a mobile phone by ESPN that told you all the scores and all the updates. Basically the predecessor to what we call an app. Yep, little did they know, instead of you having to buy an entirely different phone and carry around a phone just to do ESPN, you could just download an app later. Ah, Blockbuster. Well, I'll tell you one of the problems with Blockbuster, other than the fact that people can get movies in their home, was that they were known for because of their religious views, they would edit the movies. They would cut things out of movies, and they had different versions of movies when you rented them than what you got in other stores or what you bought in the store. Creepy little Miss No Name. Yeah, who thought that was a good idea? Now this sounds like a good idea. This was the Fisher-Price video recorder, and what this did was instead of using an actual video cassette to record on, you could put in cassette tapes, and this would record 4 minutes in black and white. The problem was that the device was so noisy that the audio made it almost unlistenable, and people didn't like that. Plus it drained 6 batteries to use it. This is Google Glass, and I don't even think I have to talk about why this was a bad idea. Do I? And here's Polavision. They said the failure in this one was just that it came a little bit too late. I've never actually seen this before. Think like a queen is not afraid to fail. Failure is another stepping stone to greatness. Oh, nice. Harley Davidson cologne. You can smell like a motorcycle anytime you want. Well, here's the 3D TV. I remember when that came out. That was, they were really promoting Avatar during this one, but they say on here, much like every other time they try to introduce a new technology in filmmaking, a lot of the studios and the movie theaters just didn't want to adapt to it, and people that ended up buying and investing in this were complaining of having eye problems from watching it too long. Go figure. Now here's the IKEA inflatable chair. I'm guessing it only took 1 or 2 people plopping down in this chair and making it explode. But it looks like the complaints were just that it didn't look good with other furniture and that it would deflate. Well, duh. I will second this one. That was a nightmare. Yeah, Four Loko was a bit of a disaster around here too. It was making people totally crazy. Said that its failure was that the FDA stated that Four Loko was a public health concern. Had a high alcohol, caffeinated energy drink. So, yeah, it was turning people into werewolves around here. Well, good try, Gerber. They tried to do an adult version of baby food that failed. For some reason, people didn't want their beef burgundy and blueberry delight coming out of a can, coming out of a glass jar. 1974, they tried that wizardry. They said people didn't like the idea of sitting alone at home eating their meal out of a glass jar. It just screamed, I live alone and eat my meals from a jar. Well, they're still working on these failures. Every time I go to the 99-cent store, I see a different type of Oreo that they're trying out, some new flavor. Some are hits, some are misses. Most of them are misses. Are you kidding me? That looks awful. I can say I'm guilty. I've had this one, and that one, and that one, and that one. Well, right here we have the Honda Pacific Coast, a motorcycle that was designed for the kind of people that don't ride motorcycles. They said immediately the complaints were that it was big and clunky. It had a big trunk, it had big plastic panels. People didn't know whether it was a scooter or a motorcycle. You know, it wasn't, they said it wasn't loud, it sounded like a sewing machine. And if you've ever ridden a motorcycle, the reason that most people that ride motorcycles want them loud is so they can split traffic, so they can cut through. They want that engine to give it a boost so that people can hear them coming. And yeah, total failure. Oh yeah, I remember this when they were doing different colored ketchups. Yeah, that was a bad idea. Some things you just get used to. Like you're not gonna find people willing to try yellow ketchup and red mustard. Just stick with what we're used to. Well, here we have the Oakley Thump, which were sunglasses with built-in headphones. Yeah. I'm guessing the reason that was a bad idea was because if one part broke, then you were stuck with headphones and sunglasses, or just the fact that you look like a dorky Terminator. Now, if somebody out there owns these and still wears them, I'm sorry for insulting your glasses. Oh, and a nice idea, beef-flavored water for dogs. For some reason, wasn't a total hit. They thought bottled water for dogs would be, but it wasn't. Oh yeah, orange juice flavored cereal. How could that not have been well? And there's Beta, which was pretty cool until VHS. Well, here's the Roland 303, and they said that the failure in this was that it was basically a device that played bass guitar to accompany people that were on regular guitar. The problem was that it didn't sound like a bass, and that the operating manual was bigger and heavier than the actual device. So they said that Roland dropped the price in hopes of making it a success, and nobody bought it. And then years later, people would find these and create new music, and they would become high in demand. Gotta love it. Oh yes, the groove stick. Basically the wishbone of drumsticks, where they thought you could hold it and basically hit the cymbal twice as fast, having a drumstick on top of the cymbal and one below. If you just moved it like that, it would hit it faster. Yep, musicians found them hard to use and said they were anything but groovy. That's crazy, I never even heard of this one. a Twitter peek. It was a device just to Twitter on. Guess nobody saw the app coming, did they? The IKEA snail hat. Those Swedes, what will they think up next? Now this one was a synthetic trachea developed in Sweden, and they said the problem with this is that they didn't even try it on animals or do any of the medical testing that you're supposed to do to actually put this into play. And so the people that they put him in died from him and were pretty much tortured when they died. And it said even when people complained, the management pretty much just ignored all the complaints. And the man who invented this was convicted of research fraud. Now here they had phone fingers, which were basically condoms for your fingers. And what they said the problem with this, or what the purpose was of it, was to be able to use your phone to text without getting finger smudges. But the problem was people found them annoying to put on. I'm gonna leave the joke right there. That's funny that they have this in here, because I just saw Casey Neistat use that in like a video about 2 months ago. You put these little packets in here and they turn it into juice. So even though Casey Neistat uses it, it's considered a failure. It's interesting to see how many of the devices in here that are considered to be failures are basically failures because they were the predecessor to an app. They were an individual device that now is what an app can do. Now this seems like a good idea. It was a digital pen that anything you wrote on the paper would be transferred through Wi-Fi into a computer. Problem is, people found it difficult to use. Now here's a spray-on condom. They said the reason this one wasn't a success is because you actually had to put your junk in a device and then spray it down with this stuff and wait 3 minutes, and people found it inconvenient. Now this is interesting, the Nike Magneto. Take a look at this. Who doesn't want sunglasses that just suction cup to your head? Interesting. Now this is to remember the XFL, which was going on when I moved out here, and it was a joint venture between the WWE and NBC. Problem was that, as Bob Costas said, it was somewhere of a mixture of a high school football game and a strip club experience. Well, this here is called a shared girlfriend, and these were popular in China. They said that you could rent them for $45 a day and have your very own latex girlfriend. Yikes. Well, they're definitely letting their politics show here by having literally an entire case of just Trump. And it starts over here by telling you the failures of Trump entertainment resorts, but then it just has the president's name as just a generality. And then these are all the products that Trump had put out. The board games and the booze and the spring water, the casinos. So they've basically added everything. They've put the game, Trump University, Trump Shuttle, Trump Steaks, Trump Vodka, and Trump Ice. Now here's the Ford Edsel, and just by reading the description, if you've ever seen the episode of The Simpsons where Homer got to design a car, it sounds like that was basically the Edsel. It says in here that they were really proud of this design, and then when it was debuted to the press had a field day mocking its horrendous design and its ugly features. The failure of the Edsel cost Ford about $350 million. Now here's the Soundburger. This was basically the vinyl record player version of a Walkman, except the problem with this is that in a Walkman you can walk. This one you actually had to pretty much not be doing anything. It had to be laying flat on a table to be able to be used, so people didn't really like the inconvenience of it. But it says also that now these are highly sought after by soundphiles for their mythical quality, the sound quality. I think that says it all. Yeah, I've never quite understood this segue, but when the person who invents it dies on it, that might be a sign it's probably not the greatest invention. So here they're advertising the Arch Deluxe, and I totally remember that. I was actually working at McDonald's as one of my very first jobs when this was around, and it says the reason this was a failure was because the commercials showed kids like looking grumpy as their parents ate these adult burgers, and they said nobody likes seeing commercials of people looking grumpy in it. And plus they said McDonald's was always kind of known for lower priced food, and this had a higher kind of more gourmet burger price tag on it, and it just warded people off. The Euro Club. Okay, it looks like your ordinary golf club, doesn't it? Except when I saw this top part was a little bit wider, I thought to myself, what is that, like a is that like a telescope or something, like a microscope, something that you can see all the way down and get a better view? Nope, that is a urinal. So when you're out on the course waltzing around the 15th hole and there's no bathroom out there, you can just, I guess, go behind a tree and use your club. Why did that one fail? Now this is the QCat, and with this you could use it as a scanner. You could scan like different barcodes and various things from like Forbes and the newspapers and everything. But they said the reason this was a failure was because even though they were sent out for free, people were worried about the data collection. They didn't like the idea of their information being able to be collected like that. So the things that we worry about today were concerns 15 years ago. Well, here we have the mono ski, which was basically put to death because of the snowboard. This, instead of having two separate skis, you put both feet right on there and you used one ski. But then once the snowboard came out a year or two later, then everybody liked that idea, and this company switched over to making, you guessed it, snowboards. Well, here's the sock puppet logo from pets.com, which was started by the founder of Amazon. He thought that it would be a great idea for people to want to buy their pet supplies online. However, people didn't want to buy their pet supplies online back then. They couldn't get used to it. And even once the company folded, this mascot was still known for a year or two later. It was still pretty popular. So I guess if nothing else out of pets.com, we got the sock puppet. So here we have Rely tampons, and they said the failure with this was that they used a material that they boasted could be left in longer. So they said women were actually leaving them in too long, and they were basically getting like bacterial infections inside from leaving them in too long. Yikes! Failure confessional. Confess here and share your failures. They don't have enough paper for me to write down all my failures. Leaving New York City. Did a hit and run on a mailbox. Threw up in a cup at Sci-Fi. I'm guessing that was a fraternity party. Well, pretty cool time here at the Museum of Failure. I definitely recommend it if you love seeing kind of crazy oddities. They definitely have plenty of them. They do have some pretty cool merch though. Like F is the new A. So these are some failure products. And look at this goofy hat. Alright, we're out of here. Well, John, I just got a delivery. He got a special treat from Alice Langlois. Yeah, he's fighting for him already. And then I'm gonna tell you guys someday a weird story, but I almost got my phone stolen in the Vatican. And it made me realize that since I do all my editing on my phone, it'd probably be a good idea to buy a secondhand used backup phone to take with me on trips, or you know, just in case I lose my phone or something, then I won't be out of luck. So I got an older version, like a different series. Like I think this is an S7 I got because it's waterproof. So now I have a backup phone, and then mailers for the sunglasses when those go out. Thank you very much. I'm gonna give him one now. You want one? Can I have this? Go for it. Thank you, Alice. Well, that's going to do it for us here in Hollywood. I hope you guys all enjoyed this. I want to thank Carrie Hughes and Sean Smith for becoming my newest Patreons. Everyone else, we'll see you all tomorrow. Have a great night, and goodbye.